Okay, so welcome to another episode of Conversations with Kevin. And as you know, this podcast is all about documenting the sort of journeys of people they recognize that they want something better for themselves. They want to create their lives by by design and not default. You know, living life very much on your own terms. And this guest on this episode is doing exactly that. So Sadie Sharp is still a very successful business consultant. She consults with me now and again on my businesses as well. But she's left that all behind and has recently put all her energy, or the majority of her energy, into a social enterprise, working with young people, underprivileged people, and creating a beautiful environment for these young people to come and work and create things for themselves. And these are the types of individuals that are almost pushed to the wayside and forgotten about by mainstream society. And so we're going to ask Sadie all about that today. But at first, Sadie, would you like to introduce yourself? Anything more you'd like to add?
Hi. No, you did it so succinctly, Kevin. I have absolutely nothing left to add.
Good.
I have to apologise in advance if my puppy starts barking halfway through.
That's okay. That's okay. So, first of all, really, what was it that made you? If you give us a bit of background in what it is that you actually did, and why the change?
Okay. I'll try and keep it short and not ramble. But I went self-employed at 24. I did a law degree, but I kind of hated it. I'm really not a detail person, but never really occurred to me that you might need to, have an eye for detail if you're going to go into the law. So I finished it because I had no idea what else I was going to do, not because I had any intentions of going into law. I took a kind of like a business admin type role when I left university. Hated it, had a dick of a boss, but kind of moved on and then became a business advisor with a kind of a government quango type organisation. And I really enjoyed working with small business owners and helping them manage their people more effectively and trying to kind of really achieve the business's goals and things. But I obviously didn't have a clue what I was doing because I was, 22, 23 at the time. Sure. So I just kind of sat in a lot of meetings and nodded and looked to my elder grey suited peers for all of the answers and such. Then I got made redundant at 24, and I think I was literally just in that sort of do I, don't I phase, and thought, do I just go get a job and do what everybody else is doing, or do I try and do it for myself? I had an offer of a contract from one of the people that I'd worked with at one of the companies, and I was like, you know what, fuck it. If I mess it up, then I'll just go get a job a bit later on. It was literally that considered and brave. I think it was more through youthful naivety than anything else. Sure. So I was 24 when I started my first company, and I went through, I think, my first 18 months Googling everything that I kind of came across in meetings, just saying, yes, absolutely, you're completely correct, and then going home and Googling it to find out what on earth they were talking about. And from that stage, I guess over the next probably 3 years, just worked for myself, doing sort of small business consultancy, a little bit of management training and things, but very kind of small fish. Then the recession hit and obviously kind of messed everything up for most people. So I merged my business with a slightly larger training consultancy and took on business partners. Mm-hmm. And that was fine for a couple of years, but kind of we sort of grew apart. We had slightly different agendas and things. So I went back to working by myself. And then the next 6-7 years, run another consultancy, doing training and development and those sorts of things. And it pretty much doubled in size every year. I still have no idea how. But I ended up taking on staff and doing all sorts of things. And within that, I think 7-year period, I think I kind of became really immersed in it. And I was kind of being successful because that's what everybody else did. And I was winning bigger contracts because that seemed like it was what you should be doing when you're running your own business, and networking with all these people that were full of bullshit. When you say, well, how's life going? They're like, oh, yes, just won a massive contract. I'm like, oh, I best go get one of those then.
Yeah, sure.
I got swept up in it. I really did. And because I was constantly living my stretch zone because I had no idea what I was doing. I then kind of started upgrading on the house, and I moved 3 times in 18 months and all sorts of things, and training for Everest and things we'll probably talk about a little bit later on. But I basically came to the point after a big breaking point for myself that actually, it's not all about the corporate life. and there must be more to life, and there must be more to me, because actually there was literally nothing else to me other than work. And I think it was only when I broke and I fell off my kind of success pedestal, I thought, actually, what the fuck am I doing to myself?
Yeah.
And that was then when I started to raise questions about doing things with young people and working outside of work, basically.
Sure. So when you said you fell off your success pedestal, how did that? Give me some details on that. How did that actually? What actually happened?
Well, I think, again, part of it for me was almost like I sort of lost perspective around what was real, because I had such a massive imposter syndrome when I was kind of growing up in business and going self-employed so young. I genuinely didn't know what I was doing, but I was completely aware of the fact that I didn't know what I was doing, and it kind of made it felt like it was a bigger issue than it actually was. So I felt like I was faking it every single day. So this imposter syndrome kind of became like a bit of a facade for me. And I constantly started to live in my stretch zone, because I thought, I will not fail. I will not let this kind of niggling self-doubt, the kind of the inner critic. I was like, I will not listen to you. I will prove you wrong, kind of thing. So I lived in that stretch zone for ages until it wasn't stretch anymore. It was just a constant state for me. So I then essentially ended up applying that, yes, to work and growing the business, but then also, as I said, moving 3 times in 18 months, because that's what everybody does, right? You get bigger and better stuff that costs you more money. And then I thought, I think I had 2 businesses running at that time and about 5 or 6 staff. I thought, I've got so much time. I want another stretch. I'm going to climb Everest. And I was trained. I was flying out to, I think, Rome and back, or Prague and back in the day and stuff. Just because it's physically possible doesn't mean you should do it, but I was.
Sure. Yeah.
And then obviously I was still kind of managing all of the staff and my own businesses and things, and then coming home and training in the gym at like 3 o'clock in the morning because it was physically possible. And I just lost all, I think, probably natural, normal conception around what was a normal level of stress and stretch, because I lived in that level here and I just went all the way up there. So I went to there's the dog. I went to the doctors one day and was kind of planning on asking for tablets on altitude sickness. And I just sat there and took a big breath, and I was like, they all just like crumbled. I was like, can you give me something just to help me cope, please? She was like, okay, I think we can have a chat, really. So she diagnosed me with, actually, I was having a breakdown, basically, and I was holding it together so tightly. Literally, like, my diary was like time Tetris. I couldn't miss 5 minutes worth of a task or an appointment or something, otherwise it all fell over. It's like this massive card of time commitment. I just cracked, and I think I had about 18 months worth of depression. I was on tablets, I was going to group, I had a couple of counselling sessions, I had a massive rescuer syndrome as well, because I'd also started doing things like youth sort of fostering. So I did a few projects with young people, because I was trying to kind of deflect from my own inner panic by saving other people, obviously.
Sure.
It was all these kind of like layers of doing too much. And I guess it's like that old proverb, isn't it, where if you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, it jumps straight back out again, but if you put it in cold water and slowly heat it up, it sits there and bakes. And I think that's what I did over a period of about 5 years, I think, if I'm honest. So I had depression for about 18 months before I started to kind of find myself. I think I realised that I was a bit of an achievement addict by that point, because I was doing stuff because it was about growth and stretch. And if I wasn't stretching and striving and achieving, then who am I? That became such a massive part of who I thought I was. There was no me in there. It was more about what I was doing and how I was operating than any sort of substance.
Sure.
I had a massive kind of like identity crisis, because I remember sitting in my lounge one weekend and a friend of mine came over, and I said to her, I was like, seriously, what do you people do on weekends? Because I can't remember the last time I had a weekend where I didn't work. What do you do? I don't understand. I'd lost the concept of leisure. And I was like, well, if I don't stretch and strive and do all of these, I don't know, trailblazing things, then who am I? If I'm not doing, then who am I? And there was no me without doing. And it took me about 12, 18 months to get off the sofa, because I was like in the sofa, and undrawing the curtains and all those small little baby steps, being able to wash your hair and run out of shampoo without breaking into tears, and all sorts of basic level functioning skills. My brother actually said to me recently that, because we were living together at the time, just as well really, that he said it was a bit like I'd been lobotomized. And it's funny, isn't it?
Really?
How
Wow.
I knew I was coasting, I was functioning, but I wasn't living. But I never really saw it like that. But I thought it's such a strong word, isn't it? But yeah, so I was on my arse for about 18 months. And again, it still took me about 12 months after that, I think, really clear in my head what I wanted. And that was then when I really started thinking, actually, you know what? I don't want a company that's successful in something that doesn't matter. And that's where I got to. The training and the consultancy and stuff was all right. I enjoyed it. It's not like I hated it. I enjoyed it. But I think if I was really honest with myself, it wasn't enough. You know, nobody put a plaque on the wall at the end of the day after I'd passed away and said, thank God Sadie put herself out and flew to Rome and back in a day, because we wouldn't have made it otherwise.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think I just kind of gave myself a bit of a talking to. Took a bit of time, obviously.
Awesome. So in and amongst all that time, I mean, if you were to look back at it now, which I'm sure you have on various occasions, when you look back at that period of time, what are the sort of the biggest learnings, takeaways for you?
I think in hindsight, having had a full-blown clinical breakdown and depression and things, it sounds silly, I certainly wouldn't recommend it as a CBD activity for anybody, but I actually think it was the best thing that happened to me, because I can't be told at the best of times. So to be told to slow down would just make me go faster and such. And I think I had to break myself to realize that what I was doing was just completely meaningless. And yes, it's fine to look at stretching and striving, doing it for a purpose. And I think I needed to break in order to get that level of perspective, because I'd taken myself so far down that road.
Sure.
What are the other things? I guess the bit that I mentioned earlier about actually when you're busy, when you're stressed, when you might be bordering on depression or just life gets a little bit overwhelming, I think the key thing that I now do to keep myself grounded is that little kind of mind saying around, is anybody actually going to put a plaque on the wall and say, thank God they went that far and they did that much and they put in those hours, because actually, you know what, the world would have stopped spinning, or, you know, I couldn't have made it. And I think we all tend to put out more than we need to, because we lose perspective of the big picture. So for me, that was another one of the massive big learnings. And I guess the last one, which is why I am where I am now, is it's not all about money. It's not all about success in a traditional business measure of what success is, and really changing your thinking. It's surprising how much happier I am now. I kind of got, I think for the first time in a long time, a sort of a life that I don't feel like I need a holiday from. I want a holiday from, because obviously, you know, we all need a break,
Sure.
But I don't feel like I need to get away from it as such. And that for me is a real pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so. So what have you taken from sort of back then into sort of your current role? How does that actually? How does it actually look? What sort of? Could you talk a bit about what it is that you're doing, the transition, and how you manage that, and some of the things that because I'm the same, that you can be mindful of your work ethic is your work ethic, and regardless of whether it's got purpose or it hasn't, you're likely to do the same habitual things. So I suppose it's a two-pronged question, as always with me. But the first one is, you know, what have you taken or are you mindful of now you have after having that experience into your new role? And secondly, you know, what's the kind of the new role all about? And maybe you can get into that.
I guess in terms of personal management stuff and making sure that I don't fall over again, I guess it's being really honest with myself. Like you say, you know, we are who we are, and I'm always going to overcommit. I'm always going to strive. I'm always going to try and fit more in than I can. I'm always going to get excited by new projects and not want to say no and find ways to fit it in and such. So I think for me, it was more about almost how do I manage that? It's quite funny that addiction runs in my family, and as much as I haven't gone down the whole kind of route of sort of substance addiction, I think I genuinely do have an achievement addiction or a stretch addiction. So I think for me it's almost a bit like, how do you have that one drink without going too far? It's like, how do you have that bit of stretch and strive without breaking? So I'm very how do you put it, I'm very planned and managed with the way that I manage my time now. So I've got a kind of like a time Tetris kind of a system where I manage my time. So I can fit stuff in and manage a couple of different roles, but also so that I can almost hold myself accountable for where I'm spending personal time. And I know that when I'm working in the evenings, what am I working on? Is it because it was absolutely necessary, or is it just because it was kind of habit and just dangling tasks? I'm a bit bored and I've got nothing else to do, and I'm not really self-managing myself, shutting off. I also do things like put reminders in my diary about keeping in touch with my sort of 5 or 6 sort of really close friends. You're on that list.
Nice. I've not heard for you, by the way, so yeah. just saying, yeah.
Yeah, every kind of like month or 2 months to kind of text out and say, you know, what you up to.
Yeah.
Let's get something in the diary. And it doesn't always happen, but at least I know that I'm kind of touch basing. Or even like with some families, like my nephews, they're lovely. And I think with kids, it's a challenge when you're busy and life gets consuming, because, you know, there's the dog. You miss out on that time. And it goes so quickly, like 6 months in the life of a 9-year-old is such a long time.
Of course it is,
so,
yeah.
So what I do with them is it's like, well, if we go and visit, I'll then agree with them the next visit before I leave, kind of thing, so that time can't fly too much. So you can still reschedule it, but at least then you've got something in the diary. So for me, it sounds really anal, I guess to a certain extent it is, but it works for me because where I overstuff so much and time does literally fly and it gets away from me, at least then I've got those kind of coping strategies in to make sure I'm still spending personal time and family time and friends and those sorts of things.
Sure.
And I guess the other thing from a slightly softer perspective is I'm much more mindful about what I'm like when I'm good and when I'm bad now.
Okay.
And when I'm on the cusp of kind of stretch to panic as such, my patience is, and I'm very patient most of the time, my patience is kind of a little bit shorter.
Right.
I get really hacked off by the really small things, and just kind of generally getting to the end of the day and feeling exhausted. But it becomes like a habit. So it's not just like the occasional day because it's been a busy day. It's like, oh God, this whole week has been like this. Oh God, this whole month has been like this. Actually, when was the last time I didn't feel like this, kind of thing?
Right, okay.
So maybe just keeping attuned to what I feel like when I'm good and when I'm bad.
That's excellent. Yeah, I mean, everyone has different strategies as well, and if it's such a physical thing with you, which is, to be honest, it is the same with a few people. You can completely miss that. I love the strategy of making a plan with the younger people.
Yeah,
with the kids, because they will hold you accountable.
Absolutely.
You said this, you said that. So yeah.
And if I don't stick to it, they FaceTime me when I'm drinking. So it's like, right, I'm going to stick to that because they need to not FaceTime me when I'm out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that segues lovely into the sort of things that you're doing now. Then obviously you're still doing a little bit of consultancy, but your main purpose and drive is the platform project. And I was wondering, you know, if you could talk us about how its very first sort of conception and you know, where you are now and where you're going, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So it was about 4 years ago that I originally started it. Within my consultancy work, I was doing quite a bit of work with companies around what's the future of work and kind of emerging trends with younger people coming into the workforce. And of course, they're all whinging that young people don't have any employability skills and they're not work ready. And obviously then you kind of looking at some of the research and emerging trends in markets, that freelancing, the gig economy, self-employment, all of these are kind of like massive growth areas for roles. But from what I was seeing, there wasn't really an awful lot out there that was really kind of grasping it by the horns to teach young people these sort of self-employment and freelance skills. there was bits and bobs, and there's a few agencies, but it's not systematic. But it also, I was really convinced by the fact that because I went into self-employment so young, I've come on so much further, and I've had so much bigger opportunities than I would have done had I gone through the normal corporate, I guess, pathway. So I was really convinced on the fact that it's a massive growth market, but also I think actually it should be an alternative. It should be up there as an alternative consideration between kind of education or work, or working for yourself in the middle. How I was going to do that, I had absolutely no idea. I thought, obviously, I can't take over the world and try and go big before I can walk, sort of thing, as I normally try to. So I was very conscious about sort of managing my experience, and I had no experience of running a youth agency, or, you know, I'd done adult training and coaching, but I'd never really worked with young people as such. So I had this idea kind of bumping around my head and such, and then around about April, about 4 years ago, I had this kind of like eureka moment at about 2:00 in the morning, and I leapt out of bed and I was like, right, all of a sudden, all these kind of like thoughts jumping around my head are starting to kind of like look quite solid. So I came down and plastered my kitchen walls in flip charts and post-it notes and all sorts of things. I was like, right, what's this going to look like? I know I'm going to call it the platform project, because essentially I think it needs to be, whatever it looks like, it needs to be a platform for young people to be able to carve their own way in the world. Yeah, okay. It's like, if you don't like your options out there, if you don't like the boxes, you don't like the jobs, or you think that actually you can do something bigger, better and different, then let's figure out how we can do that. But also at that point in time, I was thinking, well, if there's young people already who have kind of fallen by the wayside or don't fit into the mainstream box of education, then they're just going to be on that kind of perpetual downward spiral of, you know, I'm not good enough, I don't fit, so therefore they stop trying, therefore life gets worse, and then they think, well, what's the point in trying? So I thought, well, of a lot of these young people that, you know, we all read, you know, newspapers and listen to the news, and a number of NEETs and unemployed young people and behavioural issues and educational needs and things, it's all, I guess the need is growing, but we're still trying to develop them with the same kind of thinking. So I thought, right, how can I kind of build that way in the middle and basically use self-employment as a way to re-engage some of these young people? Because in essence, it's a bit like, well, if you think the system is shit, then let's teach you how to make your own money. And that for me was kind of the carrot for a lot of these young people that don't attend school, or they're in the job centre and on benefits, and with the young people that don't really fit those traditional pathways. It's like, right, well, fine, let's create you a new pathway. Let's figure out what you're good at and teach you how to make money for yourself. So that was my original thought for the platform project 4 years ago. But obviously, because I had no experience, I started speaking to a lot of local people, local other agencies, to see if we could maybe have partnerships, or if maybe they were doing it already and I can go and work with them to do this, but nobody was really doing it. So I incorporated the company and then started trying to get volunteers on board and potential referral agencies and things like that. And obviously at the time I was still running my consultancy business. And I guess it's just a funny turn of life. I was pretty much ready to roll. I was in the final stages of a funding bid to fund it as a startup. And then my mum died. And I was like, oh, fuck, you know, life's got a way of kind of hitting you in the head with a brick, isn't it? And it's like, right, I'm going to test your resolve now and see how badly you really want to fucking do this. So I kind of couldn't cope, really, because my mum, we were really, really close, and it just kind of completely rocked my foundations, I guess. So I did what I have always done in the past when life's not going your way. I invested myself in work because it was the easiest way to distract myself. So I then merged my consultancy business with a project management consultancy, and we did really big kind of change projects with councils and things, but it involved me working away Monday to Friday, like down in Cornwall, up in Nottingham and things like that. And it was basically like me running away from anything that looked like normal life habits, where I would have to then recognise my mum wasn't there anymore. So I did that for, I think, a year, and I was working away from home Monday to Friday, coming home late Friday after about a 6-hour drive back from Cornwall or somewhere, sleeping on Saturday because I was exhausted, getting up on Sunday, doing my washing, repacking my bag, and then driving back. I was like, you know what? This is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. What am I doing? I've been here before. You clearly don't listen. You don't learn very well, do you? So I did have a talking to myself after about a year. And then we took a slightly different direction with the business. So I then kind of worked from home a bit more, trying to develop the business and bring other people into new projects. And that helped because it wasn't draining so much out of me. But it kind of started drifting back about, well, I've got the project there. I need to really do something with it or close it. And it was kind of on that edge of, you can't really have something dormant for too long, really, before actually they start asking questions. And we then started bidding for work through the consultancy. And I think the turning point for me that made me realize that I needed to get out again was that we won a piece of work, and it was a big piece of work. And my business partner phoned me up and said, we won it. And my heart sank.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
So yeah, that for me was like, oh yeah, this clearly isn't sustainable for me on an emotional level. It's not just the physical stuff. So we had a very difficult conversation, but he understood. And I was like, right, I need to get out. So I then went back to just doing solo work with my own consultancy. So it took me about 3 months to kind of build that back up again, to get some work up. So it was tight for the first sort of 3 months. But then work got sustainable enough. I made some changes. Because we were earning lots of money with the consultancy, I had a brand new Jaguar 4x4, and I was living in the house on my own and all sorts of things. I was like, you know what? This is silly. I don't need this. I got rid of the car. I rented out both of my spare rooms. Downgraded, remortgaged. So I kind of resized my cloth accordingly, if you like. So, you know what, if I want to be able to do the project, I need to make time for that, which means I need to not have to work 5 days a week with doing training and consulting. I don't want to. I would like to consider, although that's the only fee earning part of my work, I would like to consider that to be my part-time job, not the project. That was kind of my goal in my head, was although I might be working 3 or 4 days a week with the consulting and the training to start with to get some money in the bank, I want to get that down to 3. And that was my kind of interim goal. And then 6 months later, I was like, got it down to 3. It's like, right, time to get it down to 2 now. How can we get it down to 2, but maybe get money in from other sources and things? And now my goal is at the point of doing it down to 1 day a week, because it still pays the bills and it pays well. So it seems silly for me to try and take that money as a salary from the project when I can use monies for other people's salaries to grow it. So that's always been my goal, really, is when the project is up and running, I'm not planning on taking a salary from it, but I do want to be spending the rest of my time on it. And that's where we're at now. So
excellent. And how long, what's the timeline with that then? Because you can as you were talking, you can quite clearly see there's been, from 5 days to 3 to 2 to, nearly you're at 1 now. And what's been that timeline, and what's gone on with the project that's afforded you to, because isn't it interesting that all of those things, regardless of whether they were what would be deemed as positive or negative, they were, of course, they would feel that way, but equally they kind of, everything led to serve you to get to where you're going, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I do think now I look back and I think everything that's happened, the good stuff and the bad, has equipped me for where I am now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is interesting in hindsight. So in terms of the timeline, so after Mum died, I went back into consulting for about 18 months.
Right.
And then for the first 12 months, I was working away and doing nothing other than work. For the last 6 months, that was when I started to pick up the project again, but like literally in the summer, we did like 1 week as a pilot. And then we did another week in October as a pilot. So I was doing background work on it, but it wasn't kind of full-time proper operation as such. It was very much almost like a little challenges, little week-long challenges that you can kind of pick up. Obviously, it took a lot of organisation, but that was the delivery bit. That was when you were working with the kids. And then it was just admin and emails and following up and stuff. So I could do it on top of working full-time in the consultancy for 6 months. Then obviously I kind of thought, shit, I can't go back to working full-time in the consultancy when we've got these big projects on.
Sure.
So that was when I stepped out and started my own business again. So from that stage, I think it's coming up to 2 years now with the project since I kind of started those little pilot projects. So we did about 6 or 7 pilot projects in the first year. And then the second year, we're pretty much more full-time now with kind of the work that it's taking me, and then some volunteers and projects and some schools on and things like that. So yeah, it's been a kind of a steady growth over the last 2 years, I think.
Awesome. So why is it so important to you? Why is the platform so important?
I don't know, it's funny, isn't it? Because I've done a couple of interviews where people are like, well, why have you started this? Like, did you have a difficult upbringing, or did you not do very well at school and stuff? And, I wasn't setting the world on fire when I was at school, but I fit the mainstream mold fine. I went to university, I had 2 great parents and things. But I guess my house when I was growing up was always full of, my cousin called them lame ducks once. It's like people who need a hand, and my mum would always take them in, and they'd live in the house for sort of 6 months, 3 months while they sorted themselves out. And she was always kind of helping other people. And I think, well, actually, maybe that's kind of the subconscious level as to why I want to do this. But I think for me, I've always enjoyed working with young people and being around young people, but my professional world has always been about coaching and developing and things. So for me, it was kind of putting those two together and overlaying it with my core skill set, which is business startups. So the one thing that I probably have done too well over the past is kind of spotting an opportunity, starting a business, kind of growing and then palming it off, or opting out or selling or whatever it has been. So kind of, I guess, layering all of those kind of disciplines and experiences together. And I guess it's really important for me, particularly when things get hard and you think, oh, is it worth it? There are moments, but then it doesn't take much, it's not very much hard work for you to have to kind of think, well, actually the difference it's making in some of these young people's lives is astounding. Some of the results that we've seen, and just the ad hoc comments that they say, and it does make you realise that actually, what, if I did shut up shop tomorrow for whatever reason, there would be a massive hole in these people's lives, and that's not fair. So I think what kind of drives me through some of those challenging moments when you think, oh God, I just need a 6-month holiday.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Not because I don't like it, but because it is draining. It's emotionally draining because it's emotionally responsible, I guess is probably the best way of putting it, is recognising the fact that I have to do this sustainably for me so that I can make it work for them. And I guess that kind of personal accountability piece, not just because of me, but because if I'm not good for myself, I'm not going to be good for them as well.
Sure. And that leads me on to the next question beautifully, actually. So, so how have you grown when in the last 2 years, personally?
It's interesting, actually, because I think looking back to what I was like when I first went self-employed, I was much more, aggressive is the wrong word, but much more forthright, much more managed, much more, I guess, probably quite dominant, because that's how I felt like I had to be in order to be successful. But it was all armor. I was very armored for quite a long time, really. I think maybe until I had my breakdown and then started to recognize, well, who am I underneath all of it? And actually, I'm not pretending anymore. I don't need to pretend. So I think one of my biggest personal developments is now to have the confidence to say, well, the reason why all of this has worked is because of me and who I am. So take that into the room. Don't try and play it up or play it down. The level is right already. And I still get the imposter syndrome and that inner critic and things like that. But I guess you just learn to not trust it. Never go away. I just learned to not trust it over the years. So I think that's my biggest kind of revelation, is that actually, what I have already is enough. It's not always perfect, but it will do.
Yeah.
So that, I think, has definitely been the biggest development point for me.
Cool.
I feel like I've stepped out of my own shadow, I think.
Nice.
And that's been, I guess that's been particularly over this last, 18 months. So since I left the consultancy, part of my development journey at the time was kind of thinking, well, I know that I want to do all of these things. I was obviously doing the project, but I thought, well, I also want to be doing things like more speaking. I really enjoyed it, but I felt like a massive imposter and very self-indulgent and egotistical, speaking to people about my experiences and my views and my professional skill set, but also what I was doing with the project. And I was like, well, what do I know? I make it up every day as I go along. So how can I stand on a stage and tell other people what I'm doing? so I really wanted to do this. I always wanted to write a book, but I never really felt confident enough to commit it to paper and kind of broadcast myself to the world. So I actually started having some coaching by a lady called Sarah James Wright. And it was interesting because I turned up to my first coaching session with her, and I'd had coaching before, and it was very action oriented and self-accountability and what are you going to do? Yes, I've done it, and very business oriented. And I went into my first session with her and got out my pen and my paper as I normally have done. And she said, no, it's fine. Put your pen and paper down. You won't be needing that here. We're going to do I'm going to center you in the moment right here. And she got me to do a quick kind of 3-minute sort of meditation and breathing exercise. And I was like, right, okay, I'll be polite. I'll play along, but I have to go look for new coaches now, aren't I? For God's sake. But I was doing this 3-minute breathing exercise to calm and center in the moment. So, oh my God, she's fluffy, isn't she? But I swear to God, I cried every single session. It was very much on the cusp of kind of sort of therapy and coaching and self-awareness, self-discovery. I think she called it systemic. But I swear to God, I feel like at the end of the 6 months, I genuinely feel like I'm 10 times the person that I was when I went into that. And I thought I was pretty good at the start. So I think it just made me realize that actually I do want to be doing all of these things. I will always have doubts. Most people have doubts. If you don't have doubts, then there's probably something else wrong with you. But it's okay to have those and move forward. And the bit that's really important to me is helping other people achieve their dreams and solve their problems. So having that as almost like an anchor motivation and reminding myself in all of the bits that I do now with the project, it's about me helping them help themselves and do what they want to do with their lives. But also with some of the speaking, it's about sharing my experiences so that people maybe don't have to completely break themselves, that they can learn from your lessons at that point. And that's kind of the focus that I put into the book, was around sharing my lessons through each of these kind of chapters. You don't necessarily have to be hit in the head by a brick yourself to realise that actually that's coming at me.
Sure. Most of us do that, don't we? We wait for an absolute crisis before we don't try to affect change. And I think I've heard you mention about, having this coach before and thinking she's going to be fluffy, and then you actually saying it as one of the most sort of cathartic experiences that you've had. And I've got a question for you. After all of that's after all's been said and done, who are you now then? Who's Sadie now?
That's a big question, Kevin. Who is Sadie now? I think actually, it's going to sound stupid. For the first time ever, I feel comfortable saying Sadie. I'm me. I actually don't need anything else to kind of say that I'm not hanging my identity on anything else. I think for the first time ever, the project's a massive part of who I am, but it's not everything. Yeah, it's like work has always been a massive part of who I am, but actually it doesn't define me, and I can walk away from it. And I think I've probably done that a few too many times. But I used to hang my hat off, hang my identity off a lot of the stuff that I was doing. But I think the first time in a long time, this last kind of year or so, I feel like I'm actually just like being now, and actually that's enough. So yeah, I think for the first time, I think that answers your question. And obviously a very untrained dog owner as well. But
So it's something I picked up on earlier as well. I just thought, I wonder what you do now. So I'm just going to ask the question as well, which it kind of leads on from what you just said. So what is it that you do? You recognize a difference, and you know when you need to sort of step away, and you schedule your downtime or leisure time or meeting with people or whatever that is. So what does it look like for you? What does your personal time look like for you specifically?
What does it look like for me? I'm a very extroverted, communicative kind of person. So if I spend too much time at home on my own, working in the office, business planning, those sorts of things, even if it's just at home on my own, I can only do that for so long before actually it's a very fine balance, and it starts kind of making me a bit more like dimming my light as such. So for me, I think my personal time is a very fine balance between literal downtime and just sitting still and being in the moment and staring at the trees out of my back garden windows.
Nice.
playing with the dog, walking the dogs. That's the other thing as well. I really enjoy that. Actually, it's oh god, I'm so busy. Be a quick walk today, and then when they're out, it's like, oh, actually, you know what? They're just being dogs, and everything else is just bullshit, basically. So. Sure. Kind of, yeah, it's very grounding. So spending time with the dogs and with the trees in the back garden.
I get that. Yeah.
Spending time with the trees. And kind of sometimes just sitting. Occasionally I read, but a lot of the time when I read, my brain is too easily stimulated that, oh, that's a good idea. I should write that down and do a project on it. So I have to be a little bit careful with my reading because I can't really read recreationally because my brain is too easily stimulated.
Yeah.
So yeah, my downtime is kind of I literally have to sit or be with the dogs. And then the other half of that is being with friends and actually making time to just go and roll with it and visit and go and see my nephews and nieces and those sorts of things. So, I mean, there's still not, being entirely honest, there's still not enough leisure time. I can always make more time for it. But as I've said to you before, I'm conscious that I'm always going to overcommit with work because I'm very focused on what's the next step for the project, and it's a values-driven decision, but it needs to be one where I'm sustainable personally as well. Sure. So I will commit to something, and I know it's going to be a stretch. Like we've got a project on at the moment that's on a Saturday morning, so that's been running since March, and I haven't had a Saturday off since March. But it's with a view of actually we've now got volunteers in who are starting to take over some of the coordination of the youth magazine project and things, with a view of actually being able to hand that over in the next month or two. So I will overcommit, but I will overcommit with a very firm kind of self-promise that it's a temporary arrangement and this sort of progression to get back my time. A bit like a time loan system. I will loan myself that time to work and then try and take it back another way.
Yeah. Nice. So that kind of lends itself into, because one of the things I was going to say is, how have you grown? We spoke about things personally, but how have you grown professionally as well?
I think what's interesting, I think when you get to a certain level of either like work success or realization or, I don't know, independence, where literally you can pretty much kind of go anywhere. Like I can go anywhere with the consulting, with the training. I can say no to work now, which is a really nice position to be in. If it's really well paid, it does sting, but I still say no. So it's still everyone's valuable.
Yeah, oh, okay. Yeah.
No.
Sorry, it's okay.
But I guess what I've started to notice is how I've grown professionally is having a little bit more, I guess, confidence in my thought process. So, for example, where I used to go into client meetings and I would probably make things like suggestions around consulting and organizational change and stuff. That was, it was good, it was appropriate, and it fit for purpose, but it didn't really stretch. It wasn't really very challenging. It was kind of more of the same sort of corporate bollocks, basically. And I thought, well, it's not exactly exciting me. It's probably not exciting them, but it works, so fine, kind of regurgitate out the same stuff as long as they're happy with it. But I think since I've started, particularly since my coaching, I've started to recognize that actually the bit that has done me very well in the past has always been where I've thought differently. And because I haven't had loads of entrenched experience from like a 40-year consulting background before I went self-employed, and because I haven't run like an established business for 20 years, so I'm not kind of burdened with some of those established ways of thinking and established ways of working, and this is how a business runs and stuff. So I'm always kind of naively innovative sometimes with my random ideas. Sometimes they're a bunch of shit, but most of the time they're just slightly different, and people are like, oh, maybe that is worth trying. So I think what's interesting, I've started having more confidence in that different thinking and starting to question established actions and stuff. And that actually has really helped with a lot of speaking work that I've had, because I'm now getting speaking bookings for talking about things like disruptive HR rather than standard best policy practice HR rubbish.
Right. Okay.
And things like organizational change, and being quite, I should say, kind of provocative with some of the stuff that I'm like writing and talking about, saying, well, actually, you know what? You say that you want to change, but then you're going to whinge about the bureaucracy. It's like, well, if you're not going to push back against the bureaucracy, you just become part of the problem.
Mm.
So starting to question some of that. Obviously, it doesn't always go down particularly well with some people, but then I'm like, you know what, I don't want to appeal to those people, and I'd rather they didn't book me. So I'm going to be honest about my thought processes and then just see what sticks and what doesn't. I mean, to the point, mind you, saying that, where I've done things like stand-up comedy and stuff in the past, and it's been online, and I've been unbooked from things like award ceremonies when they thought I might be a bit too blue. I'm like, well, okay, I'm not exactly going to, do a stand-up comedy set in the middle of the award ceremony, but okay, fine, horses for courses. So it doesn't always sync with everybody, but I do feel a lot more confident being me now. But I think the other thing that struck me only the other week, actually, was where I started the project. I was very, I guess, attached to the fact that I think every young person should have the opportunity of learning how to be self-employed. Like we're doing some work with schools around trying to educate the teachers about how can you wind in like an enterprise element into mainstream sessions. So rather than teaching them textiles, why don't you teach them how to upcycle things and do a fashion show, and then they sell tickets for the fashion show, and then it's a bit more like real life rather than just classroom, let's learn how to sew a hem kind of thing. So doing some work with them and such, and it's always been like, well, I don't need to run those sessions. I can't physically service every young person's needs with the enterprise agenda. So I'd like to be able to enable other agencies to have the same kind of ethos and way of thinking and entwine enterprise into all of the things that they're doing as well. And it was quite interesting because I met a lady at a training event a little while ago, and she got back in touch and said, look, I'm launching a youth development not-for-profit, but we're focusing on like life skills for young people. So things like financial management, independent traveling, and those sorts of things for young people with things like social anxieties and such. I thought, great idea, wish you all the best. But then she got back in touch and said, actually, I'm very conscious that I've kind of dabbled a little bit, but I don't really know what I'm doing to launch this properly. Can you come on over and I'll pay you a consultancy fee? And I was like, fuck, I'm still making this stuff up as I go along anyway. You want to pay me just because I'm literally 2 years further on than you are, but okay, if I've got anything to add, then we can have a meeting. If you think I'd be value, then fine. It's not up to me to decide whether I think I would add value. If she feels like I'm adding value, then fine. What was really interesting was then I had a conversation with one of the people who's on my board for the project. And I said, we were just talking over a cup of coffee. And I said, no, there's this other project that I went and chatted with her, and we're going to do a little bit of consultancy and helping her develop her business model. And she said, whoa, hang on a minute. If you want to be helping other people do this, then we franchise this and it becomes a revenue stream. And I was like, well, yes, the concept of franchising it so that we can pick it up as a model and do it in another city so you can spread the model, then fine. But what you mean as in we're not going to help other people do this stuff because there might be a competitor? That was where her head was at. And I thought, I don't give a shit if they're a competitor. I'd rather, if she's good at doing it, then great. If I can help her be good at it, then great. If she ends up being better than I am at doing it, then good on the young people, but also surely it would then drive me to have to be better. I genuinely believe that competition can make you better. So let's help other people become competitors and see how we all fare in it all.
Sure.
So the only people that are going to benefit from that is the young people. And it surprised me that I think it wouldn't have been that long ago that had somebody who has got more experience in this area than I have that pushed back against my kind of thought process, I probably would have very quickly backed down and thought, oh yeah, shit, maybe you're right, maybe I shouldn't help because we will be doing it with our young people, right? And it was interesting, but I didn't realise it at the time. It was only afterwards I thought, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. That's true, actually. And it's funny because that's almost like an old paradigm as well, because I mean, coming out of a coaching space, my competitors are people that I would also do collaborations with. And the whole idea is like, the intention is that anybody that comes into contact with somebody or that we could come into contact with leaves improved or able to do whatever it is they need to do. So with that being in mind, then you can't really afford to keep other people down or other organizations down, otherwise you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Again, that's kind of like the end result then is something else other than serving people to the greatest good, because sometimes serving people to the greatest good means referring them to a different group or different person or organization. The other thing you picked up on, again, I picked up on as well, is that it was almost like, oh, it's good that you recognized it though, because you said, well, I'm still making this up, and I'm only 2 years ahead of this person. But first of all, 2 years is an absolute lifetime, isn't it? And and secondly, it's just like you rightly said, you don't really know. I don't think anybody really knows. They do make it up on the fly, and I think the only thing you really can be certain of is uncertainty, and you just go and just roll with it. And I think that's what makes most people want to stay safe, even though staying safe can be to the point of painful, dull, boring, whatever. Stops them from making that transition into doing what you're doing, working for yourself or whatever. Lastly, God knows what this, I'm slightly older than you, but the generation that you're working with, who knows what the world's going to look like there and then. It feels like it's going back that way. So I use a lot of independence and things for my shopping or whatever, and because I recognize the value that they're giving, and I understand some of the struggle that they go through. So, and I think fending for yourself or being more self-reliant rather than using the big corporates or these big chains or whatever it is for your service or thing, is a real benefit. You feel a bit more value. If I go to my local butcher around the corner, he knows what I like, he knows my name, those types of things. It's not Simon in Tesco doesn't know none of that, and the food isn't of a great quality either. So I don't know. For me, I feel like there's a bit of a shift going on, but as far as working with niching down, and also there's a massive opportunity for people to be more self-reliant rather than just be labeled with a job or labeled and just fit into these types of boxes. Whereas because if I was to use my pay grade against my exam results, then geez, I wouldn't. I think the world is definitely changing, and not knowing and being flexible in real time is actually a skill. So I just wanted to I just wanted to commend you on that, really, because I don't think a lot of people actually notice, and we just kind of follow suit. Because, like you said earlier, I'm chasing this thing. I upscale my house because that's what you do. You get a better car, you get a better job, you get a bigger contract, and do less, and don't even realize that you're actually diminishing your own life force or energy. So with that being said, then how has all of this so far changed your life?
How has it changed my life? Oh, another big question.
Another small question for you.
I know. How has it changed my life? I think I feel really quite liberated by it all, because like you say, I think it took me quite a while to realise that the one thing I'm good at is navigating that white space where you don't know what's coming next. And I kind of originally I thrust myself into that because I'm like, you will stretch, you will grow, you will achieve, you don't know how at the moment, but you're going to. And by doing that became my comfort zone. And I love that space where you don't know what's coming next. And I relish the fact that I kind of make it up as I go along, and you just trust the fact that actually I haven't completely fucked it up before now. So I'm sure there's still plenty of time, but so I think where am I now? How has it changed my life? Who am I? I guess it's really liberated me, because I'm enjoying the fact that I don't know what's coming next, because it can go anywhere I want it to go. So yeah, it's really quite exciting, I think. And a lot of people have asked me kind of how have I ended up doing so much, and the project and the book and all sorts of bits. It's like, I still don't know. I just start and then kind of figure it out as I go along. And as much as, obviously you need to, with some things, have a bit of a risk head, I have very little risk adversity in me, because I'm like, you know what, let's just give it a go and then see what happens. And I genuinely, everything that I've started, I haven't known what the whole journey would look like, let alone the end point. It's like, let's just start off with a basic principle and learn as we go. And as long as you can do that, then you know, you'll get closer to that end goal. You don't even need to know what the goal is at the end. It's just like, I quite like this direction of travel.
Sure.
So I'm going to go with the tide and see where it takes me. So yeah, it's I feel quite liberated where I am now.
Perfect.
And I know where the tide takes me.
Lovely. Oh my God, that's amazing. So I have one more question for you, and then I will let you go. But before I do, I just wanted to just acknowledge you for all the work that you're doing. Obviously, we're friends, and I've known you personally, but I've known you on a business level as well. And you are extremely efficient and can see things, and you do think outside the box. And also, I'm not even sure if you're aware of it. You have an innate skill that I've seen it with you. I've seen it personally with some of the coaching that you've done for me, but also with the young people. There's a belief that you pass on that these people can do, that you can achieve more. You have that almost like without saying it, it's almost like you say, "I believe in you," and that is I think that's a gift. I don't think that some people have it and some don't, and you don't. Even if you think, "Oh God, I don't think that's good. I don't think that's you're going to do that," or whatever. You remove yourself from that. You manage to sort of take yourself out of the way and allow that person to sort of, make that mistake if they need to make a mistake, because you recognize there's value in them, rather than shut people down or anything like that. But I think it's the belief that you put in people and faith that you put in people is a really, really commendable attribute that you have. So I just want to acknowledge you on that quickly. So last question then. It's not that big. It's not that big a question. It's not that big a question. So probably apparent. It leads on from the last one, really. So at this stage in your life, what does living full mean to you?
For me, living full is the ability, for me, because work has always been such a big part of who I am, living full for me is being able to work and it not feeling like work, because it's so passion and drive focused. It doesn't feel like work, it feels like a purpose. And that for me is living full. So there's other stuff too that obviously I need to do that in a way that's personally sustainable, which, as we said, we talked about, but that's always going to be a work in progress for me. But yeah, I feel like I'm living full now because I don't work. I fulfill a purpose, which sounds very kind of, grandiose, doesn't it? But it doesn't.
That's super fluffy for you.
Doesn't feel like work. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. That's awesome. Brilliant. See, that wasn't too bad, was it?
Yeah, it was fun. Not too many dog dramas either.
No, that's it. That's great. So look, thank you very much for your time, Sadie. I really, really do appreciate that. And we will speak to you. So that concludes today's episode, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye.
you.